Well, hey, hi, hello there. My name is Lydia Linendahl. I am a stained glass artist in Milwaukee, and today I'm going to show you how to do some decorative soldering. So let's go.
Hey, editing Lydia here. Just want to give you a warning. I had to edit the audio on this because my fumigation fan for my soldering iron is on full display throughout this entire video. So I tried to do some audio editing. It's not the best, but hopefully it's not too distracting for you. I did not make sure that my bangs didn't get in the shot in some of these overhead shots. So I am so sorry that my bangs take front and center stage in some parts of this video. But while editing, I feel like you can still kind of see what's going on. So I don't think it'll be that distracting. I hope you enjoy. Toodles.
Hello, I have been requested to do a video on wire work. So I have already soldered this piece all together, and I'm going to be adding some decorative wire work onto it. So I'm going to show you how I do that, and you get to come along with me as I'm getting this video in two angles. This video is on my iPad, so it's a little shittier quality. Apologize. Gonna turn on my iron, and I don't need it as hot as I normally would because we're just tacking things on with this. If we have the temperature up too high, then we tend to risk accidentally melting more than we want to. We're going to flux this puppy up. So I think what I'm gonna do, I kind of just go with the flow, see what calls to me, see what speaks to me. So I'll show you kind of how I decide that as we go along. I like doing something different every time to make my pieces kind of unique. Safety first, y'all. I really like the pattern of this glass. I know it's a little dirty right now with the flux, so you can't tell, but it's got some wavy pink inside of it, and it's textured, you can tell on the back. So I don't think I want to distract from that. I think I just want to add some wire work here to the sides and maybe some swirls down here. So I'm going to start actually with those swirls down here. I'm going to use some 20 gauge copper wire. I like 20 gauge because it's not too thick, not too thin. It's like just right for the style that I like to do. You can totally get away with doing this with 18 gauge wire as well, which 18 gauge copper wire you can find at most hardware stores. So what I'm doing to start is I'm not going to cut off a piece yet because I don't know exactly how long I want it yet. I'm just going to start with working off of the strand. As you can see, I bent the very tip of it so that I have a little bit of a loop. And I want to make sure you guys can see that. Yeah, a little bit of a loop there. What this is going to be is the tip of our design. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to take my soldering iron, and I fluxed just the tip, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to tap it with a tiny little bit of solder, and you can see it turns into a nice bead there. I love a little tiny bead. So we're going to let that cool just to make sure that it doesn't get messed up when I start to take my pliers to it. This is the base that we're going to actually hold on to while we do the rest of our design. I'm going to do just a simple swirl here. So I'm going to take it from here, and what I'm doing is I'm kind of just bending it in the direction, but I'm guiding the wire with my other hand so that it doesn't get any weird bends in it. If you bend it too quickly, you'll get weird bends, and it's hard to get those bends back out and straight once you've already done this. I am also going to tighten this swirl here. As you can see, I grabbed my pliers and I pushed a little bit just to get that bend a little bit tighter. So I'm kind of pulling this way when I'm doing this. I'm pulling the wire this way and I'm pulling this way to try and get it to go in the direction. How I get my swirls to look even is I'm looking for the distance between what was before and what is after. Let me grab smaller pliers here so that I can really show you here. So I'm looking at the distance between here to here, here to here, here to here, here to here, right, as I keep going along. And that helps to get your swirl nice and consistent. And I'm just going to keep going around, keep going around. I think this is going to be a good enough size here. So let me check. Yeah, and I don't know exactly where I want it to come from. I think I want it to come from here. So I want to make my swirl just a tiny bit bigger so that this point goes to here. And then I'm going to swirl it around so that it nicely swirls into this motion. We're thinking of, when deciding how we want our swirls to go, I'm thinking about what is the natural flow of the pattern, right? I don't want it to come out of here because there's no real, this is just a line. There's no real flow to it. Here, we already got this flow here, so I just want to come out of that flow and add a little zhuzh, a little something. And I think I might actually, do I want to flip this? No, because then it's going to go alongside that, and I don't want that. You totally could. There are no rules here. I'm just giving you some guidelines that I usually use when trying to decide how I want to do my pattern. Go just a little bit bigger. Once this is big enough, you can kind of just manipulate it by hand. That's what I want. So now to get this to go the other way, I'm actually going to cut it off here. And I gave myself a little extra than I'm going to need because I don't want to cut it too short and then be like, I wish I had more wire, because you can't add more wire afterwards. So I'm going to make this swirl go up here a little bit. And a lot of this part is just a little bit of tweaking. So now what I'm doing to get that curve to go the other way is I'm actually using my nail. And I'm just curving it and pulling with my pointer finger while I'm doing that. And you don't want to go too aggressive because then you're going to get an actual bend instead of just a slight manipulation here. Once that's there, oh, I love that. I'm really happy with that. Do you see how that curve just goes in just a tiny bit? It's just a little bit more of a swirl there. Love that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my pliers or my cutters and I'm going to cut. I still want to give myself enough room to be able to have a solder point here. Yeah. Solder point here, solder point there, solder point there, solder point there. The more solder points you have, the better, just because then it's not going to move, especially when you're polishing and especially when someone else is handling it in the future. Like if you're making this for someone else, you don't want them to be like, oh, it moved, I don't know what to do now, you know? We want to make it as solid as possible. So now that that is completed, we're going to tin the whole entire thing. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to flux it up real good. Flux it up real nice, and I'm actually going to pick it up with my tweezers here. Pliers works too, but remember pliers, if you have pliers with grooves, you will start to get indents if you're squeezing too tight. I like the tweezers better because A, I get more precise movement, and B, I get more, I get less accidents along the way. Sorry, my hands are shaking. I just ate lunch, so my protein hasn't kicked in yet for the day. All right. So I have covered this entire thing. Now, I know what you're thinking. Lydia, don't you just need to kind of tend one side, like the other side's not going to show? Yeah, but you might as well make it pretty. You never know what's going to show up later, and you're like, oh man, I wish I had just tinned the whole entire thing, you know? So, alright, now that that is all tinned, I just want to make sure I don't have any extra beads hanging. Like, do you see how there's a little bump here? There's a little bump. You can see it there. And there's also a little bead extra. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull that to the end and just pull it right off. And then I can take it off on my soldering iron. Now that this is ready, I'm going to place it where I want it. And we're just going to do some gentle tacking. I also want to make sure this is fluxed. All right. Watch out. It is a tiny piece of wire, but it does get hot. So you don't want to burn yourself. So make sure it's cool before you start touching it. So I think what I'm going to do first, and yes, it's not entirely flat. So we're going to have to kind of push it down as we solder it. Also, if your bead, your blob bead starts to go a little flat, flux it, add a little extra solder. Or what you can do is flip it upside down when you add that bead. And then when you bring it back around, it will have weighed down in to a little bit more of a ball. So that's actually what I'm going to do. I'm going to add a little more solder to this so that we get a nice bead here. So once it cools, you can flip it around, and you see how, of course, we got some residual flux here. Let me clean that off so you can see. Now we have a nice pronounced bead there. All right. So now we're just going to lay that down. And I'm going to start by soldering to this tip. It doesn't matter exactly where you start your tacking, not really. That's where I'm going to start. And I'm just going to hold it while I do it, because once you get that first tack down, it's a lot easier. I want to make sure you can see what I'm doing here. So I'm putting my iron into the solder that's already there. Now that I have it placed in place, I can use this to do the rest. And then pushing the wire into it to let it sink in. Now I can kind of manipulate this exactly into the placement that I wanted. When it's on an edge, and I have hobby cane on this edge, I want to keep it inside because I don't want solder to flow over the hobby pin. It's just not a great look. So that I will let sit inside. And I'm just going to tack all 3 of these spots. Just tack it. And it's just a gentle tap. And I'm going to use my tweezers. Try and push this a little bit. Just so that it reaches there. And I am using a little extra solder because it's reaching a little extra far. Now what we get to do is clean up. It is up to you what style you want to do for cleaning this up. If you want your tacks to not be obvious, you're going to want to just blend it in to the soldering you've already done. And you may need to add a little extra solder because some of that solder is going to the wire. That's one option. Another option is you can make it really deliberate, and you can do some decorative beading on there to give it a little dot. That is just a gentle tap on there, and you can even flex it and really clean up that bump so that it is a little dot. Some people like that. For this, sometimes I will use that if that's the style I'm going for, but not on this one. So I'm just going to blend that in. And I'm going to do the same thing over here. I'm just tapping on the sides and letting the solder flow out to even out and flatten out a little bit. You still want a nice, dome as usual, but yeah. So now the fun part is doing the exact same thing on the other side and trying to get it symmetrical. So we're going to do the same thing over again. We're going to bend the tip, and the tip. Oop. I'm going to go through this one a little bit quicker with less direction and just let you see what I'm doing. Tap the tip with some solder. Going to make my swirl. Telling the wire where to go with my other hand. Oh, that didn't do what I wanted it to do. If it goes a little further than you want it to go, you can take your pliers and flatten it where that bend is, and then just keep going. Like here, there's a little bit of a bend that I don't want, so I'm going to straighten that out and then keep going. And the nice thing about doing this with copper wire, instead of pre-tinned copper wire, is even if I put my pliers to this and I get some grooves, tinning over it will make those grooves go away. And we're getting to the point, it really doesn't want to, sometimes it gets all bent out of shape and then it doesn't want to do what I want it to do. Literally bent out of shape. I think that's where that saying comes from. Okay, so we're starting to get, and what you can do is you can flip it around to see, oh, I was right on the money there. We've got it pretty much perfect. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut off, and I'm going to start placing this. See how we're there at there. I'm going to bring it in. I'm going to take this little bend out. Boop. Yep. And then, there we go. And then, once I'm happy with that, we're going to do our little curve with the nail. And I ended up wanting a little more drastic of a curve on the last one, so I'm learning from that one. I'm trying again with this one. That might have been a little too drastic of a curve, so I'm just going to push on either side, and that'll flatten out that curve. Yes, I'm happy with that. So I'm going to look and cut where I want to cut. And then we're going to flux and tin. Pro tinning, pro fluxing technique right there. Standard rule of practice with wire, if you want it to sit in a certain place, you have to go past that point and then let it spring back. It will not just go where you want it because it is strong enough that it wants to stay in a certain way. So yeah, that's another way that you can tin it. I am going to flip this over and get the other side. There we go. I'm happy with that. And I got some solder on my iron already to go ahead and tack this down. So I'm going to pop it into place. And then I'm going to tack the tippy tip. And I'm going to then push it down into the solder.
Oh,
So I'm just
brother, this guy stinks!
Of the solder. And I got a little too much on there, but that's okay. We'll just have a more pronounced blob. There we go. Now, to make the rest of it fit, it's going to be a little different than the other side, and that's okay because this is handmade art. It is not going to be perfect. We don't want it to be perfect. We want it to be unique. We want it to feature the love and creativity of the creator. So now I'm just gonna push that wire down into there. Grab some solder for the other two. I think I want this to go up. But putting this here, push this down, so I kind of want it to come up here a little bit more. There we go. I'm going to push this one in. Awesome. Push that down until it cools. And clean up the sides. So you can clean them up as you go, or you can clean them up after you've tacked everything down. There's no rules here. Whatever works best for you. And then we're going to tack that last little bit. This part right here is popping up, as you can see. So I'm going to push that down while I tack this last part because I don't want it pushing up in the final product. There we go. And we're just going to smooth it out on those sides. And there we go. We've got a nice start here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do some, I think we're going to do some swirl into a swirl here. And I'm kind of drawing into the flux that's on the glass just to get an idea. And then we'll do one more little swirl up there. How did I draw that? I want to look at what I drew. A boop boop boop, two boop boop boop, and then a boop boop boop. That's my plan. So we want to go this way first. Well, actually, because we're thinking tip first, we want to start with this swirl. And then we're going to go down to where the base is. You got to kind of think ahead a little bit. So here's an example. I get to a point where I have so many little ridges in here. Do I keep going or do I cut it off and try again? I'm going to cut it off and try again because I don't want to have to try and fix more ridges, right? I'll probably use that for this little swirl up here. it doesn't need to be salvaged. It's okay. So I'm actually going to give myself a little more wire here. We're going to try again. You want to try to avoid kinks as much as possible, and the way to do that is to watch out how you're holding it when you're like pulling it out and doing the other stuff that doesn't involve bending it, because you can make kinks in there that you don't even realize that you're doing until you get to this part and you're like, why is there so many bends in this wire? It's driving me cuckoo bananas. So boop, we're going to do a little swirl in here and then have it come down into there. So how to do the swirl. You're going to grab the wire where you want the base of the swirl, and I'm just going to bring the wire around town. And you want to be gentle so that you don't get a full-on bend. You just want a little twist, like so. And I'm gonna bend now here. I'm gonna actually use my nail because I want a little more control and swirl to it. There we go. And just kind of give it a little, yeah. Sorry, I'm not using a lot of words right now, and it's just because it's kind of vibes at this point. Get creative with it. Like, have so much fun. This is the fun part. It's just like trying to make it look the way you want it to. What I love, what I do not love, is how stiff this is. Yeah, there we go. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my nail and get that swirl in, or that loop in. Oh, yes. That's what I want. And sometimes when you don't get the curve exactly how you want it, once you have it tacked down, you can kind of mess with it a little bit. I'll show you how to do that. So, I'm gonna cut this where I want it. The great thing about using copper wire and tinning after you've bent it, I'll try and get it as flat as possible here, is that I can solder these 2 points together so they won't go nowhere. When you are cleaning this afterwards, make sure you clean all of this wire work with a toothbrush so you can really get underneath and get any flux that's underneath there, because that's going to cause you issues later if you do not. And then now, while I have it upside down, I'm going to flux my blob. I'm going to flux my blob. And I'm going to tap from underneath with some solder. And make sure it's horizontal, perpendicular to the table. Or, no, sorry, parallel to the table. And then once it dries, cools, we have a really nice defined blobus there. That's great. So we're going to add another piece of wire to the top of this wire later to get that swirl. I'm going to use that leftover swirl that we didn't end up using. I am tacking this first before I tack that on, because this will become the new tack point for the next one. If you try and do it all at once, you're going to risk it not being flat, and we don't want that. So I tacked it down. I'm going to bend it back into the position that I want. And I'm just kind of giving it a little oomph to get it to go where I want it to. But it's okay. That's why we tack it down. So we're telling it who's boss. We're telling it where to go. So now we're going to tack on each of these. And that one already just kind of blends really nicely into there. And once you clean it all up and do maybe some steel wool on it before you polish it, like any weird bumpies or anything will go away. Watch out, if I get this too hot, that wire is just going to come right back out of there. So I want to make sure I'm doing short little taps. See a little bead attached to the inside of this, and I'm going to try and see if I can melt it down enough that it just, okay. Then it just went into the rest of it. So now we're going to add that extra little swirly here. I think I want it. I remember abandoning this because it was not straight. And so I'm going to try and get it as fixed as possible. There we go. And so since this swirl's going this way, I want the next swirl to go the opposite way. So it's going to go like that. And it's going to go right in there. We're really close to it being the size that I want it. I'm just going to make it just a tiny bit tighter. Because this is a smaller swirl, it needs to be proportional to itself. All right, I'm happy with that. So of course, again, we're going to tin. Now you can see with this one, when I put that blob on there, it made this a lot longer than it usually is. That can be a style choice for you. I like mine a little tighter, a little more of a neat blob than a bloob. So I'm just gonna tap on that to make the solder flow down the rest of the way and make more of a blob. I got some extra solder on the end of this, and we'll just use that to tack it. Normally, you could just add some solder to your soldering iron and do the same thing. But since this is already here, we might as well use it. So, before I tack these down, I want to make sure that this point will connect. This I can move once it's in place. I can't make the wire go down farther. So this is the tack point that I want to do first. I'm going to flux. All I'm going to do is just tap the two together, like so, and you will see I'm doing the lightest touch on this. I do want to make sure this wire lays flat. Oh, luckily with Wirework you can just do. Now I am going to let this cool a little bit. I do not want a heat crack underneath here. This is the scary part of doing this, is that you can, because I'm putting heat directly onto the glass, I could get a heat crack underneath. So I'm going to make sure to take my time. I'm actually going to bend my wire to be a little flatter, to push into there. There we go. And now we're going to try again. Now, that seems like a little tiny tack. It's probably good enough. I am going to add just a tiny bit more because I like my attachments to be a little more stylized, like my blobs at the end. I'm going to tap this just a little bit more to flatten it. There we go. That's how I like mine to look. But again, try different things. See what way works best for you. See what style you like the most. It just takes practice and exploration, which are the most fun parts about stained glass. I just want to make sure that that goes into that wall, so I'm probably going to push this in while I tack it on this side. There we go. And then I'm just going to flatten that out. And there you go. Now I'm going to go do that on the other side, and I will be right back with you to show you the final product. I'll also clean it up and everything and show you final product at the very end. She is all cleaned up. I did take some, I did not polish her yet. She's not all polished. I just cleaned her up in the sink, but I just love how glistening the wire ends up turning out once it's all done. Ugh. It's so pretty, and I really think that using the copper wire is what gets it that shiny, and soldering over, tinning that copper wire really gets it nice and pretty here. I will clean this up, and this will be getting up on my website soon. So if you are interested and you would like to purchase her, she will be up there soon. Thank you for watching, and toodles. Have a good one.